Maureen Morehead. Maureen Morehead is our Kentucky Poet Laureate. She has published 3 collections of poetry: In a Yellow Room, Soulgrave Press, 1990, A Sense of Time Left, Larkspur Press, 2003, and The Melancholy Teacher, Soulgrave Press, Larkspur Press, 2010. A 4th book, Our Brothers' War, Soulgrave Press, 1993, with Pat Carr, is a collection of poems by Morehead and stories by Carr based on the lives of Kentucky women serving during the Civil War. A 5th book, Late August Blues, the Daylily poems, is forthcoming from Larkspur. In addition to the collections, individual poems have appeared in magazines including America, the American Poetry Review, the American Voice, the Black Warrior Review, California Quarterly, the Greensboro Review, the Iowa Review, the Kansas Quarterly, the Louisville Review, the Kentucky Poetry Review, Poet and Critic, and Poetry Magazine. Morehead's work is featured in the Kentucky anthology 200 Years of Writing in the Bluegrass State, University Press of Kentucky, 2005, and Conversations with Kentucky Writers 2, University Kentucky Press, 1999, and Kentucky Voices, a bicentennial celebration of Kentucky writing, Kentucky Arts Council, 1992. Her writings also appeared in Places Give Rise to Spirit Writers on Louisville, Publishers, Printers, 2000, and Savory Memories, University of Kentucky Press, 1998. She has won fellowships for her poetry from the Kentucky Arts Council and the Kentucky Foundation for Women. She is a member of the poetry faculty of Spalding University's brief residency MFA program in writing. For the past year, Maureen has traveled across the Commonwealth, sharing her writing and her love of poetry at the beginnings of her 2nd year as Kentucky's Poet Laureate. I know Maureen will continue to be an excellent ambassador for the literary arts. Maureen.
Thank you, Secretary Sparrow. That was nice. And thank you, Arts Council. And thank you all for being here. I have some comments to make about this year. It's been wonderful, and I have some memories that about my travels that I want to give to you. So about a month ago, as I drove down the Mountain Parkway to speak to students at Lee's Community and Technical College that afternoon and to faculty that evening, the hills gave way to bigger hills and then to mountains, where an avenue of hundreds of redbuds on the slopes along the interstate showed me the way to Jackson. Such beauty is overwhelming, as was the hospitality of my host and hostesses in Jackson and everywhere I visited the past year. I drove to Pippa Passes late one night, also into the mountains, and woke the next morning in a valley where Alice Lloyd College has thrived for decades. I talked about poetry to a convocation of students dressed in their Sunday best, a ritual reserved for convocation days out of respect for the lecturers. At Harvey Brown Presbyterian Church in Louisville less than a week ago, I read my poems, and then members of the audience read their favorite poems to me, explaining why they were so. Shel Silverstein, Langston Hughes, Emily Dickinson. Somehow we got on the subject of memorization, and within minutes, the entire group of seniors was reciting the beginning of the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, reminiscing then on how poetry had been emphasized when they were in school. That night, a 92-year-old woman recited a poem to me she'd learned as a girl. A couple of months earlier, I'd heard the Poetry Out Loud competitors, high school students, become the conduits for poems they themselves had chosen to memorize, and recite. Earlier this year, I talked to about 50 seventh graders in Oldham County, gave them a prompt, and was astounded at their poems written in haste in a stuffy classroom. Months before that, I'd sat with a group of ministers at the Presbyterian Theological Seminary in Louisville who were there for a week-long writing workshop. We talked for over an hour about the exploratory nature of writing, how through it, in whatever genre you choose, you can entertain ultimate questions, asking and thinking, working through to understanding and enlightenment. Excuse me. In Millersburg, just outside of Lexington, I read and discussed my poems at the 5th Street Cafe, owned by a couple who are masters at encouraging the arts in their community. I talked to English teachers in Morehead and Lexington, retired university women in Berea, governor's scholars at Murray State, middle schoolers and their parents in Owen County, and a genial group of readers and writers last Saturday afternoon affront the old Mulkey Meeting House in Tompkinsville. I also read and traveled to other places, which were wonderful as well. I intended to travel throughout Kentucky, spreading the word that literature is crucial to us as a culture. Instead, I witnessed many Kentuckians who already know the value of the literary arts and who proudly shared their devotion. My time as Poet Laureate so far has been inspiring and fun. I've met good people and seen our state close up. I'm looking forward to where this next year takes me. Thank you. Well, when I teach poetry, which I've done all my life, I usually tell people don't write war poems or love poems. So what I'm going to read now is a war poem and then a love poem. I think I wrote this poem that I consider a war poem partly because Mrs. Bush uninvited a group of poets to the White House right after we had gotten into the Iraq War because she got wind that they were going to that they were going to read anti-war poems. And as a result of that, millions and millions of poems were written and put online that were war poems. This poem is called Afterwards. You know, what do I know about war? I've never been in war. I don't know war firsthand. I have read The Red Badge of Courage. He wasn't in war, but somehow he was able to manage it. But I've read wonderful poems by veterans that I couldn't even imagine coming close to. What I can imagine is a neighbor whose family member is either wounded or killed in war. And that's what I did for this poem. I imagined that, we were hearing all these news reports at the beginning of the Iraq War about these horrible deaths and wounds caused by IEDs. And every war sort of has its own specific weapons and its own specific types of injuries. So what I did is imagine that the woman next door to me or across the street had learned that her husband had been killed in the war. So, and this poem also, I should tell you, is really about how at some point I think I felt that neighbors would have a responsibility to intervene if need be. So afterwards, apples in a bowl rot quietly. Wet leaves mat the background. It's early November. Deer leave tracks in the soft mud. Raccoons scavenge. Owls worry the yards with questions. Weekdays, a school bus stops, its headlights awakening our kitchens. Sometimes children wait at the ends of their driveways with books and lunches, mothers in the lights of the doorways. But what happens that is difficult to talk about happens behind closed bedroom windows. A woman, for example, retracing her husband's race across the desert, his steps into the palace, an elbow here, a bit of bone to hold his head up there. September is October is Saturday morning. Suddenly, red buds appear on the red maples. An early bird mows his lawn. In the painting is a small dory lying in the dry hay of a barn loft. Who was it struck the wrong note, muting the bright tinnitus of day? Grief guides our footsteps, little cars across her kitchen wooden floor, wordless. And now for the love poem, which when I showed my husband, he said, that doesn't seem like a love poem. So we'll see what you think. In me there is no wanderlust. In me there is no wanderlust, as in you there is. A place in Paris you'd take me if I said, yes, let's go to Paris, to Brussels, Belfast, Verdun, to Banff, Zion, Yellowstone, Yosemite. Again, a steep ascent into Death Canyon, a bank of snow, 2 young men hurrying down the trail, a mountain goat, a second, third. We pressed ourselves into the wall. What happens to us, to me, when the memory of this first day of the new year, of this house we raised from dirt to sky, when our trees, these windows, this upholstery I chose for our comfortable chairs, this oak table, that promise to be impossibly kind, these words fall back to dirt. Past the year we sped down the Watterson Expressway in our ill-built cars, to the room, cell, den. It was a cell. To the rainy day the 2 of us stood before Father Flynn, pledging with skittish hearts a life of trekking close to home. I would take you to Wyoming if I could, because even now is the promise of flesh in this house, this room, these words, those trees, sweet cedar hiding the houses beyond, oak and ash against the watery gray, branches I can't see their crowns, the fans of their arms, framed as they are by the trio of windows and the full glass door. Thank you.